Joining me in studio now, Ben, good morning. I know we'll have a lot to say about the Kenya-Tanzania relations and, of course, the politics that we expect will start in Tanzania just about after this mourning process ends. It's already started. We've had some sentiments from Tundu Lisu. I had a chat with him in the morning, Tanzanian opposition leader who's currently in Belgium. He spoke to us earlier on in the day. Let's take a look at that. Samia Hassan Suluhu. I want us now to speak to opposition politician Tundu Lisu, who's joining us live from Belgium. Remember, he's been among those who've been piling pressure on the Tanzanian government to make known the whereabouts and the health status of the president. Thank you very much, Mr. Lisu, for joining us this morning. This news breaking last night, and for the past 1 week, you have been asking questions. Where is MAGUFULI? How have you received this news?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to share my thoughts about these dramatic developments in Tanzania. To answer your question, I have received news of President Magufuli's passing without any surprise, to be honest. I had expected this all along. From the first day I tweeted on March 7th, on Sunday of last week, when I asked the question, where is President Magufuli and what is his state of health? Because at that point in time, I had information from very credible sources within the government that the president was gravely ill with COVID-19. And his situation was actually very bad. So the news today has not come to me as a surprise at all. The only thing that surprises me is the fact that they continue to lie up to now. Even now that he's dead, his government continues to lie. Magufuli died of corona. That is one. Number two, Magufuli did not die this evening. I have information from basically the same sources which told me that he was gravely ill. I have information that Magufuli has been dead since Wednesday of last week. And all these denials, all these silences, they just show that these people are not credible at all. They're lying even now that he's dead.
Well, of course, those are the thoughts of Tundu Lisu, the opposition politician, joining us from Belgium. But now that the president is dead, I know you have been at loggerheads with him, and especially in the last election in 2020. How do you eulogize him?
Well, what should I say? Really, it's poetic justice. President Magufuli defied the world on the struggle against corona. He defied the East African community. He defied all our neighbors. He defied science. He refused to take the basic precautions that people all over the world are being told to take in the fight against corona. President Magufuli did not wear face masks. He actually denigrated anyone who wore face masks. He did not believe in vaccines. He did not believe in science. He placed his faith in faith healers and herbal concoctions of dubious medical value. And what has happened is happened. He went down with corona, and now they are telling us that he had heart disease. It is corona. His chief secretary died of corona. In fact, two of his closest associates died of corona. The former foreign minister died of corona, Dr. Mahiga. The first vice president of Zanzibar, Maalim Seif Sharif Hamad, died of corona. And President Magufuli has not taken any precautions. I said in one of my tweets that his ways were absolutely reckless. And this is what has happened today.
Well,
He's
when
gone with corona.
Yes, Mr. Lisu, when all is said and done, we cannot deny the fact that Tanzania is currently in mourning. The whole country is in mourning of a president who's died, his family, his friends. What is your message to Tanzanians this morning?
Well, my condolences to his family. He was a husband, he was a father, he was a relative to many people. I send condolences to his family. To Tanzanians generally, my message is this. This is the time to open a new chapter for our country. President Magufuli, in the 5 years that he was president, caused havoc to our country. There are so many people who have been killed in these 5 years. There are many people who have been injured, tortured. There are many people who have been persecuted. I barely escaped with my life. There are people who have been exiled. There are people, thousands, who have lost their jobs on dubious grounds. There are thousands more whose homes and livelihoods have been destroyed by his policies. He is dead. This is an opportunity for our country to come together and to build our national committee once again. Mm-hmm. This is an opportunity, a very rare opportunity for national reconciliation, which had been made impossible by President Magufuli. This is the time to return back to the drawing boards in order to give our country a new constitutional and political order, which was thwarted by Magufuli's predecessor, President Kikwete, 7 years ago.
Right.
So that we don't have to go through this trauma of the past 5 years again. So it is said somebody has died, but this death, this particular passage, offers a very rare opportunity for our country to move onto a better footing, to move on a more democratic, a more just,
right,
and a more human rights conscious country, which has been missing these past 5 years.
You say it's time for reconciliation for the country. Do you now intend to go back to Tanzania?
Of course I'll go back to Tanzania, but my going is part of what I'm calling for. My return, and not just mine, there are many others who are in exile. Others are in Kenya. They came to Kenya 2 days ago, I'm told. It is time for all Tanzanians to sit together to account for all the evils of these past 5 years, because you cannot have reconciliation without truth. So we need truth, we need reconciliation, we need justice to all those who have been persecuted, who have been killed, who have been maimed, who have been hurt by these 5 years.
Right.
And on the basis of that truth and that reconciliation and that justice to the victims, will build a better Tanzania, will build a Tanzania that respects her citizens.
Right. That's a conversation I had earlier on with the opposition leader from Tanzania, Tundu Lisu, speaking to us live in Belgium, reacting to the death of John Pombe Magufuli. He's said a lot. One of the things that perhaps it's time for Tanzania to turn a new chapter. My colleague Ben Kitili joining us in studio now. Ben, you have been following up on the events in Tanzania. We have been asking, where is Magufuli for about 2 weeks now? Looking at this news and some of the things we hear Tundu Lisu saying, what does it set the stage for?
Indeed, good morning, Akisa. Thank you for going on air with this very, very early today. It is the biggest story on the continent, really.
Right.
I mean, the passing of the 5th president of the United Republic of Tanzania. It is what everybody wants to know. Speculation has been rife for the last few days, really, especially on social media, over the whereabouts of President Magufuli. A lot of people, especially here in Kenya, you know, having so many theories about his whereabouts, whether he was in Nairobi, he went to India, apparently. The government of Tanzania saying that he never left the country, and that is where he passed on, according to the Vice President, Samia Suluhu Hassan. But Very big claims coming from Belgium when you're speaking earlier to Tundu Lisu, of course, whose history with the late president is well known. Very interesting that he says, he accuses the late Magufuli of being extra-constitutional in the way that he governed since taking over power in 2015. But at the same time, the Constitution says the Vice President should take over as head of state and government for the remainder of the term. But Tundu Lisu was telling you that Tanzania needs to go to an election.
A fresh election.
That is a big statement that will be setting the agenda, I believe, down in Tanzania. The political parties, the opposition parties, will be trying to react to that. Obviously, the big story now is people, processing the news that Magufuli is no more, the mourning period as announced by the government, the burial and all that. But it will be setting the stage for what next.
But then, looking at some of the statements Tundu Lisu is making, you say it's a very big statement given, but how is it likely to be received by the political class and the general public in Tanzania? Yeah, I mean, we will see how that plays out. The opposition parties, especially Chadema, on whose presidential ticket Tundu Lisu ran in 2020, where he was beaten. He says that was not an election. He says it was a fraudulent exercise. That is the reason he gives for not recognizing that Samia Suluhu Hassan should take over as president of the East African nation for the remainder of the period. We'll wait to see what happens. We'll also wait to hear from the other big official opposition parties like ACT Wazalendo. There has been also pressure from their leader, Zito Kabwe, just like Tundu Lisu. So it will be interesting. And also, of course, during the day today, we'll be trying to speak to governance experts and political analysts and lawyers from down in Tanzania to find out what really their take is and the mood of the country, what it is, and of course reactions from Tanzania in terms of Tanzania has been accused, especially under Magufuli Akisa, of not being very in terms of the freedom of speech. So we haven't really heard a lot in terms of reactions from Tanzanians and what they have to say about this. The rest of the continent, Kenya and Uganda, have had their say, especially on social media, but we really haven't heard what Tanzania have been saying. So we hope to do that, to get to hear from Tanzanians and the leadership in Tanzania later today as this story continues to develop. Well, thank God we have Rajab Hassan there, so he will be giving us all the updates. Ben Kitili is still here in studio with us as we just try and dissect what next for Tanzania. What do we expect to see from the politics? With 4 years to go for Vice President Suluhu, will she make it to the end, or the opposition will disrupt some of the happenings then, especially politically? We'll be trying to analyze this for us as we give you the latest updates. Remember, condolences continue to stream in. But my colleague Trix Ngado at the newsroom is continuing with some of the reactions and analysis on the same. Let's go over to the newsroom with Trix Ngado for more.
Thank you very much, Akisa Wandera. Now, of course, when it comes to John Pombe Magufuli, his handling of the coronavirus pandemic has made headlines locally and across the continent and internationally. One of the articles in the papers actually described that element of his leadership as an idiosyncrasy, and not much was put into it except for looking towards religion. Now, joining me is Rawland Ebola, who is a lawyer and lead researcher at Amnesty International. His area of jurisdiction is Uganda and Tanzania, and is going to help me analyze some of the elements of his leadership, that is John Pombe Magufuli, and of course make heads or tails of some of those things that have been decried by some of the interviewees that we've had earlier on. Thank you so much for joining me and making the time, Rawland.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, and we'll start from the very obvious one, the handling of the coronavirus. In your view, do you think this president was infringing upon the rights of the people by the way he was handling this pandemic?
Thank you very much. And first of all, my condolences to the people of Tanzania, to Janet, the wife of the late President John Pombe Magufuli, and the family at large. You mentioned COVID, and we all know that Tanzania has had a difficult or a different stance in terms of handling COVID-19. And one of the things that we've always talked about is the idea that, the right to health also includes the right for people to receive relevant information about, COVID-19 situation and what affects their health.
Yes.
So denying Tanzanians that opportunity or the right to information in order for them to make right choices about their health really affected many Tanzanians, as could have been seen by, recent sentiments by the head of the Catholic Church there, where they say that
were contradictory.
People. Yes.
Yes, go into that.
Yeah. Also, in the recent few months, the discussion around vaccines, and the president, the late president, denying, that the vaccines were actually effective and dismissing them as, as being useless. Also dismissing use of facial mask. Of course, it's only in the recent times that he mentioned that, Tanzanians can wear the mask as long as they're manufactured in the country. So there have been a lot of difficult, the situation has been very difficult because the president really pushed for a different stance from what the World Health Organizations and other countries, especially in the region, were doing.
And if this information was available, let's even talk about the statistics, the number of infections that were being reported. When you look at everything that comes out, Tanzania is still at last April. So therefore, that means there was no numbers, there was no planning, and perhaps, of course, no look or a view of what's going to be done in the future. So as we look towards Samia Suluhu Hassan leadership, what do you expect or what do you hope to change in terms of how they're handling this pandemic?
Yes, so this is a very complex transition coming after, the death of a president, and of course knowing where Tanzania is coming from in terms of what everyone has been speaking about, what Amnesty International has reported in the past. We hope that with the swearing in, which will happen, I hope, of Vice President Samia Suluhu, that we will have an opportunity as as human rights groups, as other well-meaning actors for Tanzania to really approach the government and to at least make them see or push for a stance whereby Tanzanians will access not just information, but also be allowed to, have their right choices and human rights to go about their business and make decisions about health.
Yes, and when we are still on that coronavirus, even reporting on these matters was quite different. When you look at Kenya, who are quite outspoken about this, even up to the time when he disappeared from the public, right? But when you look at Tanzania, it was quite the contrary. They were not open, they were not speaking out, and the few people who were talking about him being ill, some of them were actually arrested by the authorities for speaking out. So when it comes to freedom of the media in Tanzania, what say you?
It's larger. It's basically freedom of expression. It's beyond just media. Bloggers. We heard that in the last few days, 3 people were arrested because of communicating about the late president's situation, and this really started back, in 2015 when there were a lot of changes, an introduction of regressive laws, media laws, and these laws went on, later on to have laws that also curtailed, internet and online communication, bringing hefty fines for, what we have come to know as fake news, misinformation, and all that. And so when the president really announced, sometimes last year, that Tanzania was COVID-free, then no one could really go against that, that announcement. And so anybody that would, would really, post anything contrary to that, face the law. And we have, a number of people since March last year, including journalists that found themselves on the wrong side of the law just because of reporting on COVID-19.
And it's good you mentioned that. So how deeply has Amnesty International been involved in helping out, or at least pushing for the respect of people's rights, such as freedom for assembly, freedom of expression? How much have you been able to accomplish given the situation and the attitudes towards those rights?
Yeah, with closing political environment like what Tanzania became, what we have done is document cases of human rights abuses, especially looking at the use of law, what we call lawfare, to really curtail on especially the right to freedom of peaceful assembly, freedom of expression, freedom of association. And in 2019, we produced a report known as The Price We Pay. This really spoke about the 4 years of Magufuli's presidency, really detailing, how changes in laws and practice had affected these rights. Last year, just a month to election, we also produced another report now looking at lawfare, how laws, and especially just in a span of 2020, just the beginning and the end of 2020, how different laws came into place to really repress Tanzanians. So what we have done, one is document, and in this documentation we are also giving recommendations, and we hope that we will get more opportunities to even engage with incoming administration and really push for human rights to be respected.
Yeah, but if I was a dissident or so-called one of those people that have been accused of immorality, those were some of the charges that were being put against such people who were speaking about the stance of the government or the president. I mean, what would I hope Amnesty International would do for me? Basically, what were you literally doing, far from documenting, to help some of these people?
Of course, we've always reacted. We've always, reacted to human rights violation as and when they happen. And this kind of reaction has, to some extent, sometimes been ignored, and sometimes, the government has reacted, sometimes dismissively. And so one of the ways in which we can continue helping and working with, human rights defenders, activists, both political and, civil society organizations and its members, is to really come and speak and raise their voices or amplify their voices where they cannot speak. So that, as Amnesty International, we will continue doing. We will continue supporting human rights defenders that are embattled, and make sure that governments everywhere end injustices.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, there's an article here on page 4 that says the title is "Leader Widely Admired but Turned Dictator," and there's a cartoon to go to it by Gado. It says Magufuli the police. There's a caricature to support that. Then Magufuli the judge. Then you have Magufuli the prosecutor and Magufuli the executioner. Do you think this is an accurate depiction of Magufuli's leadership style?
It is difficult to actually, at this point, castigate,
but facts
the dead president.
Are facts.
Yes, I'm going to that.
Yes.
Speaking about, the kind of leadership that Magufuli has had in the last, slightly more than 5 years, it's really been difficult in terms of what this depicts is that Magufuli has been everywhere, policing and, curtailing rights in the different spheres of life. So, to some certain extent, that is where and why he got his name Bulldozer,
yes.
Apart from fighting corruption, but also with regards to, his stance on the various rights that we've talked about.
Yes.
So there is a lot of truth in terms of what this depicts and what we have been documenting as Amnesty International.
Absolutely. And as we head towards, as we close this conversation, I'd like you to comment on political, exile that has been large from that country. Far from them hemorrhaging leaders to, the virus, we have had many people fleeing for dear life out of the country. What is your take on that, and what do you hope will change as far as how the democratic space of Tanzania?
Yeah.
Briefly.
Yeah. As I mentioned, this is actually a complex transition, and we hope that we will be speaking to the new leadership in terms of looking at, changing or reversing some of these,
human rights violations. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Thank you so much. That is Rawland Ebola, who is a lawyer and lead researcher, Amnesty International, covering Uganda and Tanzania. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. We're going to take a break. On the other side, we shall be joined yet again by Tundu Lisu, political leader in Tanzania, who's right now in Belgium, and Jebra Kambole, who is coming to us from Tanzania as well. Do stay tuned.